The story starts with a young boy named Percy who lived on a floating island up in the air with his super strong Giga Chad grandpa, where they lived a calm and elegant life without any TikTok brainrot content. Percy plays around in the rolling hills full of energy and wonder when he suddenly spots a giant monster bird flying very close to their island. He immediately runs towards his house where his grandpa was working in the fields. Percy shouts at his grandpa that he wants some goddamn KFC for dinner, so his grandpa, being the gigachad he is, grabs a garden thingy and uses enough power to break Israel's Iron Dome as he easily no-scopes the bird out of the sky. Percy starts chasing after the bird and pretends to be Goku with his spiky hair as he jumps in the air and makes a grab for it. His grandpa is horrified at this little for brains doesn't realize that he is going to fall down from the island. Thankfully, Percy manages to grab onto the ledge of a rock and pulls himself up, after which they go back inside the house to start prepping the bird. Percy grabs the largest blade he could and starts swinging it around like an idiot, but somehow manages to slice up the bird in perfect pieces. But unbeknownst to both of them, their happy life was about to come crashing down as a tracking mark disappears from the bird's head. Grandpa cooks the bird and they both start eating it hungrily, after which they decide to burn off some calories to maintain that beach-ready body. They start sparring and Grandpa makes the first move, but Percy is much quicker and easily avoids his attacks before pushing him back with both his hands. That's where the fight ends though, as Grandpa easily picks up Percy and throws him away like I throw away my responsibilities. Percy starts crying like a little baby, which he is, but his grandpa tells him to stop being a wuss and come back in. Grandpa wanders off to wash the dishes when he suddenly realizes that it's Percy's birthday tomorrow, so he runs back to the house where he finds Percy watering the plants with his hose. His grandpa reminds him that he is going to turn 16 tomorrow, which I don't believe at all. Percy knows that it means he can have beer with his grandpa, but his grandpa refuses, claiming that they don't have any wives to beat after the alcohol yet. He tells Percy to follow him and leads him up a hill where he tells him to look beyond the little island which they live on. He tells him that tomorrow he will be an adult, which means that he can leave this place and go on adventures in the world below. Percy, however, seems disinterested as he tells him that he doesn't care since he enjoys living here. His grandpa can't believe that a young boy wouldn't want to go on adventures, so he tells him about all the cool and mysterious things present in the world, but Percy's answer remains the same. Later that night they head back to the house and cook some fish while the grandpa drinks a bunch of beer and gets drunk. He tells Percy that when his father turned 16, he immediately left the house to get a taste of the outside world, but Percy reminds him that he also died outside without being able to meet with him again. Grandpa looks saddened by the reminder that he never got to see his son again and starts drinking even more while Percy continues to make some arrows to hunt giant lizards tomorrow. Later that night they end up sleeping, but Percy wakes up at the crack of dawn and silently makes his way outside the house near the edge of the cliff overlooking the clouds, where he again remembers all the cool things that exist in the world. The thought of witnessing these things makes him so excited that he starts running around the entire island as he can't wait to go adventuring. But as he falls down, he snaps back to reality and realizes that he can't go away and leave his grandfather lonely on this island. With the thought of adventure in his mind, he drifts off to sleep and wakes up later in the morning when everything seems covered by a thick fog. Suddenly, he hears a creaking sound coming from the sky and spots a weird man in a red armor and helmet which looks like a shoe on his head. He sails the boat across the sky and reaches the island, asking Percy where his grandpa is. Percy had heard about the Red Knight who sails a phantom boat, so he gets all excited and tells him that his grandpa is at the house. The Foothead Knight starts walking towards that direction, while Percy stays behind and tries to see whether he could sail the boat. Unfortunately, he isn't even able to move the boat an inch, when he suddenly feels a sudden dread deep inside his heart. He quickly dismounts the boat and starts walking towards his house, wondering what the knight has to do with his grandfather. Meanwhile, his grandfather was busy prepping food for breakfast when he suddenly senses someone is behind me. He uses his knife to parry, but the magic attack was too strong as it blasts him into the house, while the Red Knight walks towards him through the fog, asking how can he live so carefree after what happened 16 years ago. Grandpa gets out of the rubble and grabs a sword before jumping in the air for the duel, where he starts attacking the knight, but the knight easily manages to match his strength and skill, parrying every single attack with precision. After that, he pushes Grandpa back and uses his cleave magic once again, which cuts through his body and destroys the house behind it. At this point, Percy finally arrives at the scene and shouts at the knight to leave his grandpa alone. but the knight simply responds with a warning shot, cleaving the hill below him. Percy isn't afraid, though, as he jumps and grabs one of the rocks before throwing it at the knight. The knight manages to slice the rock in half, but Percy follows it up with a bigger rock, which gets sliced into 4 pieces as well. Before the knight could end Percy, though, his grandpa grabs the knight from behind and screams at Percy to run for his life. Percy refuses to run, though, while the knight tells them that it's no use, as he is going to kill both of them regardless. With a single flick of his finger, the knight slashes the grandpa's body to pieces, causing him to lose consciousness as he falls to the ground, while Percy watches in horror. The knight tells him not to worry, though, as he is going to send Percy to his grandpa as well, and with that he uses the cleave spell on the young boy, slashing his body and the hill behind him as well. Percy starts falling to the ground, but somehow regains his balance before trying to punch the knight weakly, but it's of no use and the knight simply kicks him away. Grandpa weakly asks the Red Knight why the hell is he doing this to them, and the knight replies that a couple days ago a prophecy was made that there is going to be a threat on the King of Britannia Arthur by the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, and they are trying to get rid of anyone who is strong and might have anything against the king. With that, the Red Knight walks away, while the grandpa apologizes to Percy for his weakness. To his surprise, however, even after being mortally wounded, Percy manages to stand up and walks up to his grandpa with tears in his eyes, apologizing for not being able to protect him. His grandpa tells him that he is the strongest kid he ever knew and drops a bomb with the revelation that the Red Knight is named Ironside and he is none other than Percy's dad and his own son. This shocks Percy, who refuses to believe this since his father was dead, but Grandpa tells him that he lied to him about that and there is a reason for that, but he doesn't have enough times to tell him everything. He leaves Percy with the final words to leave this island and find his dad. With that, his grandpa draws his last breath and falls silent while Percy cries alone on the empty island. The next morning, he wakes up hoping everything was a dream, but his dead grandpa reminds him of the horrors of this world, so he buries him and builds him a shrine before opening a box which was created by his grandpa with gifts for his birthday. He puts on the new clothes and in a couple of weeks decides to start his journey down the island. He starts descending the rocks, sleeping on the ledges at night, and climbing down during the day when he is finally able to see the ground below. In his excitement, though, his grip loosens and he ends up falling down only to get saved by a bird, which thrashes him away as well, and he drops down on a tree which breaks his fall and saves his life. The first thing he finds after falling down is a weird pink-looking dog, something that he has never seen on the island. He immediately gets excited and tries to talk to it. But obviously the dog doesn't reply, so he starts following it, only to lose it when it gets scared and runs off. Thankfully, he manages to come out of the woods and spots a bunch of people off in the distance practicing their performance. He goes closer and finds out a big man named Katz who throws a bunch of paper in the air which starts burning immediately. After that, he introduces a hottie named Elva, who uses her hoop to disappear and reappear her monkey. After that, he introduces Don, but Don seems to be a jerk who refuses to practice since no one is there to see the performance. Percy immediately starts clapping for them, claiming that he has never seen something like this ever before. Don decides to use this opportunity to get some free cash, so he walks up to Percy demanding payment for watching the show. But Percy doesn't even know what money is, which annoys Don, so he demands his bag, which Percy gives willingly to see more. Don then takes out his sword for the performance and uses his magic to make Percy float in the air. Percy can't believe this, when he suddenly notices that Don and the others are already on the horse cart running away. Percy doesn't even realize that he was getting robbed, but the moment he drops back to the ground, he runs at full speed and manages to catch up with the cart in no time, shocking every single person. Don gets scared and throws him his bag, claiming that he was just kidding, but Percy doesn't care about all that and asks whether he knows someone named Ironside. They ask who he is, which brings on a grim mood over Percy as he tells them that Ironside is his dad who killed his grandpa a couple days ago. The troupe of performers realize that this boy is going through some heavy shit and offer him a ride to the nearest village. Percy remembers his grandpa telling him about villages, which makes him really excited, but Don decides to make some profit by including the boy in their shows and gives him a bow to check whether he is any good at it. Unfortunately, Percy seems to be complete ass in archery as he somehow manages to give Don a clean fade even though Don was standing behind him. After that, they all start heading over to the next village. when Katz tells Percy that they are a bunch of jobless people who wanted to be holy knights, but their dreams were crushed, so now they do this to make ends meet. While they were talking, two villagers come running down the road, telling Don that there is a wolf loose in their village and that they must quickly call the holy knights. Don tells them that a wolf is nothing and they can deal with it, so he puts the spurs on the horses and starts racing towards the village, hoping that after driving off the wolf they can get food and lodging tonight. All his hopes and dreams come crashing down though when he realizes that it's not just any wolf, but a goddamned monster wolf. He immediately turns around scared and starts running away, but Percy jumps out, running towards the village to save the people. He grabs the wolf's attention and takes out his bow before shooting 2 arrows at it. But since he is complete at archery, one of the arrow ends up hitting him on the head, while the other one nails his cloak to the ground. With that, the wolf decides to launch an attack, but Don jumps in the middle, shielding Percy, but ends up getting injured instead. Percy looks at Don wondering why he would do that, while the wolf decides to finish the game. But this time Percy stops the wolf with a single hand before jumping up in the air and slapping the wolf so hard that he hits the ground and dies immediately. This shocks everyone in the village as they wonder who the hell this kid is. He gets celebrated by the villagers who give him a bunch of juice, after which he starts asking everyone whether they know anyone named Ironside with a red armor. None of them seem to know who the hell he is talking about when suddenly a holy knight appears in the sky floating on a frisbee. He introduces himself as Pell the Black Knight and claims that Ironside told them that he killed both the grandpa and the child, but he clearly had a soft spot for his own son. Percy is shocked to know that this knight knew both his grandpa and his father, but before he could say anything, Katz moves in front and tells the knight to be a little more sensitive since the kid's grandpa just died a couple days ago, but Pell simply smacks the shit out of him, knocking him to the ground. This ensures a battle as everyone starts backing off while Percy gets ready for a fight. Pell grabs his maracas while Percy runs at him bare-handed before planting a kick on the knight. Pell is surprised as he gets pushed back even with that heavy armor, but no matter how many times Percy tries to punch him, he can't break through that armor, while a single punch from Pell drops Percy to the ground. Pell tries to end the fight with his maracas, but Percy dodges only to get hit by the second attack. To Pell's surprise, however, Percy manages to block the blow and sidesteps to land a barrage of punches once again. But it's of no use as Pell simply grabs him by the head and tells him to at least use some magic if he is not using a weapon. Percy simply replies that he doesn't have any magic, which shocks Pell, who can't believe that Ironside's son doesn't have any magic. He soon loses interest in the kid and decides to end the farce as he starts punching him again and again. Suddenly though, something changes in Percy's body as a huge wave of energy passes and pushes Pell away, while Percy stands breathing hard with magic overflowing from his body. Instead of being happy though, Percy starts freaking out, unable to understand what the hell is wrapped around his hands. He starts running around the entire area trying to shake it off, while Don screams at the little idiot that this is his own magic power. Percy has never experienced anything like this before and is still scared, and runs up to Pell asking him to take it away. But the moment he touches Pell, the Black Knight gets blasted away and falls to the ground, surprising Percy. Don again screams at Percy that he is doing a good job and should beat the crap out of the cat with his magic powers. Pell realizes that he will have to start using his own magic powers as well and grabs his maracas, while Percy excitedly gets ready for the fight. Pell decides to start with the attack and summons a fireball, shooting it towards Percy, who barely sidesteps and dodges the attack, but before he could turn to attack, he realizes that Pell can control the fireball. Pell continues to send the fireball towards him again and again, while all Percy could do is run away and try to dodge it as much as possible. Pell realizes that Percy can't really outrun his attacks all day and sooner or later he will get tired, but Percy has other plans. He immediately runs behind Pell, and this time when the fireball comes crashing towards him, Percy swats the fireball down into the ground, turning it into a bunch of disappearing embers. Pell surprises him with the trump card as the embers reignite into a flame and completely devour Percy. He tells Percy to surrender, otherwise the flames will burn him to a crisp. But to his surprise, Percy manages to adapt his magic and creates a magical barrier to protect his body from most of the burns. This in itself was amazing, but soon Pell notices a bunch of small golems that look like Percy surrounding him and grabbing his body, preventing him from moving. This causes him to dispel the flame magic, and to his absolute shock, Percy's wounds end up magically healing as he stands up once again to continue the fight. Pell realizes that Percy doesn't seem to have any one particular type of magic, as he can use multiple types at once, which makes him 1 in a million person with hero-type magic. He realizes that there is no doubt that Percy is one of the 4 knights of the apocalypse, but while he was thinking, Percy knocks at his armor and punches him away, telling him to continue his fight. Pell, however, reveals that he hasn't even used 10% of his powers as he blasts away all the little golems away from him and starts walking towards Percy, ready to take him seriously. Percy thinks that he still has a chance, but before Pell can begin his attack, Dawn intervenes and uses his magic to make Pell float in the air, while screaming at Percy to run away as he has absolutely no chance to win against this monster. Percy still doesn't understand how strong Pell is, but the Black Knight decides that enough is enough and blasts everyone away, burning half the village and injuring both Dawn and Percy. He then walks towards them to finish the job, when suddenly the fox that Percy saw when he first came down walks in between them and uses a magic bead to teleport them to a completely different place. Dawn realizes that they are on top of the Dragon Bones, which is 30 miles away from the village. This makes Percy worried again since he doesn't want the villagers to get injured, so he tells Dawn that he needs to get back to the village. But to his surprise, the fox starts talking and tells Percy to sit his down, as Pell will most probably not do anything since he was only after him and would leave the village alone. He tells them that they need to follow him if they want to live, but Percy claims that Pell knows where his father is and can help. But the fox replies that Pell is a liar just like his father and the other holy knights. He tells Percy that he needs to be very careful since Pell has got his eyes on him and will not rest easy till he finds Percy again. Dawn still doesn't understand why the hell would a holy knight be after a 16-year-old boy. The fox claims that the holy knights belong to an evil king, but according to a recent prophecy, 4 heroes known as the Knights of Apocalypse are going to destroy the holy knights and end the reign of the tyrant king. Because of the prophecy, these holy knights are scared shitless and want to find and uproot the problem once and for all. Percy asks who these 4 heroes are, but the fox replies that no one knows that yet, but he thinks that he has found at least one of them. Dawn suddenly realizes that the fox is talking about Percy, as he is one of the 4 knights. He tells Percy that these 4 knights are going to be the incarnations of famine, pest, war, and death, and these knights are going to bring about the end of this entire world. Percy is unfazed by it and simply claims that he won't end the world no matter what, but the fox says that it is not under his control, and that sooner or later they will end up wreaking havoc on the entire world. Percy retaliates by saying that these heroes are supposed to be knights themselves, but he is not even an apprentice, let alone a knight. All he wants to do is find his father, beat the crap out of him, and then go around the world looking at all the sights that his grandfather told him about. Fox tells him that the prophecy is 100% true, and it doesn't matter whether he agree with him or not. But for now, Percy needs to come with him. Percy refuses though, claiming that he needs to find his father no matter what, so the fox sighs and tells him that he does know where his father is. This piques his interest and Percy asks where they can find him, and the fox replies that his father and the other holy knights are in Camelot. This word doesn't really mean much for Percy, but Dawn looks a little scared. He asks the fox what the hell is he talking about since Camelot was destroyed several years ago in the giant battle between monsters and angels, which forced the King Arthur to run away with whatever knights he had remaining and hide. Fox looks back and tells him that Camelot still exists, but they need to use a secret way to enter it, and that journey begins with the kingdom of Lyones. Percy at first was a little apprehensive, but when he heard that the journey will contain a lot of mysterious areas with demons and monsters lurking around, he immediately got excited and agreed to go. Dawn didn't really have any options since he didn't want to return back as a circus performer with Cats and Elva, so he agrees to accompany Percy as well. Soon they descend back to the ground when even before walking, Percy's stomach starts grumbling. They decide to hunt some food while walking and Percy happily gets out his bow and arrow. But since Dawn was not in the mood for another haircut, he takes the bow away from the little stormtrooper and tells him to wander around and forage for vegetables. Percy obviously ends up getting bored and enters a weird-looking cove with a strange-looking forest inside. Meanwhile, Fox and Dawn try to hunt rabbits, but even Dawn's aim is not the best, and when he tries to aim for a deer, he accidentally ends up hitting someone else. Hearing the scream, both him and the fox run up to the other side of the hill to make sure the person was okay, only to find a giant nun, like a literal giant who was praying to the goddess of earth. Dawn immediately apologizes to the giant, but to her the arrow did little more than poke her a little, so she apologizes back, claiming that she got a little scared, that's all. Suddenly 2 small fairy men fly towards the giant, telling her that a weird-looking boy just entered the forbidden forest. Dawn realizes that this boy must be Percy, so he decides to investigate, since according to the giant, the forest is filled with deadly creatures that even the brave men refuse to fight. Meanwhile, Percy was happily roaming inside the forest, smacking monsters left and right, scaring them away while he feels delighted to find a place which is so filled with animals. Suddenly, though, he hears a cry for help, so he immediately runs in that direction, only to find a little house in the clearing. He pushes it open without knocking and finds a boy his age completely dripped out standing in front of a weird creature bound up in ropes. The creature screams at Percy to help him as the boy is evil, so without thinking Percy decides to rush in for an attack, but the drippy boy simply sidesteps Percy, causing him to run into the wooden pole and hurt himself. Percy, however, doesn't seem to have a brain which might get affected by head strikes, so he simply gets up again and breaks through the ropes, freeing the creature, who immediately runs away out through the window. Percy was fascinated to see a flying fairy for the first time, so he starts looking outside, when the drippy boy comes behind him and knocks him out, claiming that he will have to become the new test subject now. Back outside, Dawn and the others manage to find their way towards the forbidden forest, but the fairies seem scared as they wonder whether it's even worth it to go inside now, since Percy is most likely dead. Dawn is shocked at that and asks what's so dangerous inside, and the fairies reply that it used to be a safe haven for the fairies, but one day a young dripped-out boy named Naz entered the forest and started converting animals into monsters. Ever since that day, the forests are ruled by monsters, while the fairies have been kicked outside. Fox claims that he can't let anything happen to Percy, otherwise he will get in trouble, so they decide to enter inside. Meanwhile, Percy wakes up from his slumber and finds himself naked, but not so afraid, and tied to a post. He starts screaming for Nas to show himself and give his clothes back to him, especially the helmet and the cloak, since his grandpa gave it to him. Nas tells him to chill out since his clothes are already in tatters after being burnt, but his cloak and helmet are safe, and he has no plans of stealing them even though they have very strong magic. Percy himself is shocked about his magical items, but before he can ask anything else, Nas comes behind him and drugs him once again, causing him to black out. Nas turns around knowing that no man would be able to wake up for at least 24 hours now, but to his surprise, Percy immediately wakes up with his hair grown a lot. This shocks Nas, who has never seen someone with such a high recovery and adaptations, who is also readily reacting to his treatments. He walks towards Percy and starts checking his grown hair now, while Percy shouts at him that he won't be able to wear his helmet anymore. Meanwhile, Dawn and the others continue to run away from all the monsters inside the forest, but thankfully the giant girl manages to stamp the monsters to the ground, saving them at the last moment. Back inside the house, Nas turns around to mix some other potions, but Percy decides that he is bored now, so he manages to break out of his ropes and wears his clothes again, but is not able to get his helmet back on. Nas is surprised that he can break the bounds so easily and tells him to get back into the seat as he takes out 2 magical daggers from his ass. Percy tells him that he can't do that since he needs to find his father and avenge his grandpa's death. But without wasting any moment, Nas attacks Percy and tries to land a barrage of strikes and stabs, but all of them get blocked by Percy at an incredible speed. Percy grabs one of the daggers and tells Nas to chill out as he can help him, but this enrages Nas even more and he starts trying to land even more slashes at Percy, pushing him back till he stumbles down to the ground. He tells Percy that he needs a test subject to try his drugs on them because he can't test it on himself, and he must fine-tune the drug because there is someone very important to him which he must save. Before Nas could do anything though, Percy's helmet flies off his hair and hits Nas in the face, causing him to fall down on his own work table, breaking a bunch of glass vials, while one of the vials with a purple potion flies towards the other end, but Percy catches it before it breaks. Nas immediately starts begging Percy to not do anything to the vial and promises not to touch him if he doesn't do anything to the vial. Percy refuses to give the vial back, claiming that Nas will just find someone else and test this drug on them. So Percy opens the cork and bottoms up the entire potion like a total jack, causing him to black out once again. Nas gets scared and immediately rushes to Percy's side, fearing that he died, but it turns out that Percy just found the taste very bitter and was being a drama queen. The potion acts as Red Bull for him as he starts running around the entire room, while he feels a surge of energy rushing through his body. He gets out of the house and starts screaming loud enough for Dawn to hear his voice from the other end of the forest. Nas comes outside the house while Percy asks whether the energy drink is working alright. Nas claims that it seems to be a great success, and with this he can finally save the Forbidden Forest. But for some dumb reason, he decides to chug the remaining Red Bull, which causes him to fall to the ground. By then, Dawn and the others also arrive at the location, and the fairies tell them that there used to be a man named Ordo who once came to the forest in search of ingredients to create medicine. He was a very nice man who told the fairies to come to him in order to get healed, so they accepted him in their community and they started living together. One day while he was healing a fairy, some other fairies told him about a lost giant named Dolores. Ordo welcomed Dolores with open arms as well, and ever since that day, the giant started living in the forest as well. One day, while Ordo was searching for some herbs, he ends up coming upon a basket with a young baby inside. He names the baby Nas as a tribute to his famous YouTube Nas Daily. Ordo raises Nas as his own son, teaching him everything about medicine. But one day Ordo disappears to get milk just like my father, and slowly Nas changed and started doing weird experiments with his knowledge. Finally Nas wakes up and claims that he needs to use the drug right now since the forest has been decomposing at a faster rate. But the fairies start throwing rocks at him, telling him to get lost. Percy intervenes and catches all the rocks before throwing them back at the fairies, shouting that Nas was creating a serum to save the forest, not to harm it. Just then a weird mist enters the forest, and right before their eyes, animals start dying and trees starts becoming monstrous. Nas realizes that he doesn't have enough time, so he uses his special venom creation magic to recreate the drug that he made and used it all over the forest. Right in front of their eyes, the forest starts rejuvenating, the dying animals get healed, and the trees start flowering once again. The fairies finally realize that Nas was actually trying to save them all along and apologize for their mistake. Suddenly, from a canyon above the hill, a weird monster emerges, but Nas immediately recognizes him as Ordo. He runs towards him, asking what happened, but Dolores stops him, claiming that there is something wrong. No Sherlock. Suddenly, Ordo releases the same mist from his mouth, and immediately the forest starts decomposing once again. This makes everyone realize that the monster has been the reason for the monsters in this forest. Nas pushes past the giant and runs towards Ordo again, screaming at him to stop and trying to get his attention. But Ordo is completely gone and turns around before grabbing Nas in his hands, tightening the grip and crushing the boy. Thankfully, Dolores grabs Ordo's arm, saving Nas's life, but her own life comes under threat as Ordo turns towards her and blasts her with his stanky breath, completely burning her all over the body. Nas is horrified to see this as he immediately turns his attention towards the now fallen Dolores, while Percy notices the fairy that he freed from Nas's house, floating above the monster. The fox notes that the fairy has a lot of evil energy coming out of him and is definitely the one who made Ordo like this. Percy realizes what he has done, which angers him, while Ordo turns towards Nas and lunges towards them to finish the job. But Percy gets in between, punching Ordo in the face, pushing him back. He tells Nas not to worry as they will definitely get Ordo back, but first they need to break the spell over him. The fox tells them that the weird fairy seems to be the cause of their troubles and they need to get rid of it first. But before they could do anything, an arrow zips past them and hits the fairy right in the dome, killing it instantly, which also causes Ordo to fall down to the ground. The scary thing is that none of them actually shot the arrow in the first place. They start looking for danger, when suddenly a holy knight emerges in the air, floating above them in his golden armor. He tells them that he is the one who converted Ordo into the beast he is now, and obviously Nas screams at him to turn him back to normal. The Golden Knight laughs, telling Nas that if they can land a single hit on him, he will turn Ordo back to normal. Without a second though, Nas takes out his magic daggers while Don tells him to back off, as there is no way he can do anything against this monster, but Nas refuses. Percy joins in, claiming that he will help, even though he can't seem to bring out his magical energy yet. Nas decides to lead the attack, but before he could even come near the knight, he uses his magic, which causes a huge hailstorm right on top of Nas. He would have gotten crushed, if not for Percy who used his insane speed to save Nas's life. Before they could regain control though, Ordo wakes up and slaps Nas away, knocking him out. He was about to finish the job, but Percy stops his punch with his empty head, pushing Ordo back, while at the same time trying to pull at his heartstrings and reach the inner heart where the real Ordo might still be alive. His trick works as the monster's eye changes as it starts tearing up at the sight of what he has done to his child. The knight notices this and decides to end all of them together, so he creates an even bigger hailstorm than before, which would have crushed them all. But Percy comes to the rescue again as he jumps up in the air and starts punching the hails with an incredible speed, demolishing everything in the air, before returning back to the ground, battered and bruised. He falls to the ground while Dawn grabs him, checking his injuries when suddenly the boy starts glowing with a golden light, which explodes with a blast of magical energy. Even the Golden Knight is shocked at so much magical energy emanating in such a chaotic fashion from a tiny boy. So he decides to end it once and for all before anything goes wrong. He uses his largest hailstorm, but to his surprise, Percy's magic gulps everything down and shoots it back at the knight, forcing him to run away. By the time he regains his composure, he finds Percy standing right in front of him, confirming their deal that if he lands a single hit, the knight will give them all the information they want. This angers the knight, who tries to strike him with his axe, but Percy easily blocks the attack without even breaking a sweat. The knight decides to take things seriously and lands a barrage of attacks, but they have absolutely zero effect on Percy, who stands there unharmed and claims that it's now his turn to attack. The knight still takes him lightly since Percy has no weapons, but he suddenly creates a giant hand out of his magical aura and smacks the knight like he is, swatting him into the earth while asking why the hell did he change Ordo into the monster. The knight replies that Ordo was committing a crime in the kingdom of King Arthur. According to Arthur, humans and other races can't coexist and we must drive them out. But Ordo was healing creatures from any race, which is a sin, so he told him to stop it immediately. But when Ordo refused, he had no other choice but to turn him into a monster who wants to destroy everything in his path. With that, he manages to slip out of Percy's grip and tells him that a young idiot boy like him can never understand the thoughts of a king, and with that he uses his special powers of bringing down a calamity as he causes a massive thunderbolt to hit Percy straight on the head. To his surprise, however, Percy's magic swallows the thunderbolt, and with that, Percy rushes towards the knight. The knight dodges the attack when he suddenly realizes that this boy might very well be the Knight of Apocalypse, which means that if he dies here, the doomsday prophecy would go away as well. Fawkes screams at Percy that his magic seems to be connected with his brain, which means that if he imagines a weapon, he can use it against the Holy Knight, while Dawn screams at him to not imagine a bow. The knight, on the other hand, creates a monstrous bird out of thunder and hail, but the bird reminds him of the birds he used to cook up with his grandpa, so he imagines the same sword and uses it to completely destroy it. After that, he shoots the energy straight at the knight, blasting him into the rocks with enough power to break the mountain, which shocks everyone. The fox tells Percy to calm down now as the knight is defeated, but it turns out that Percy doesn't really know how to stop his magical energy. The fox sighs, as they will have to work a lot to figure out his magic, but thankfully, the giant Dolores wakes up again. It turns out that Dolores instinctively used heavy metal magic from the giant clan to save herself from the stanky breath, and with that, the fox finds the magic wand of the knight and breaks it, which converts Ordo back into a human. Naz starts crying, and they all rejoice before saying their farewells. Percy and the rest get back to the Dragon Bones, where Percy claims that his initial thoughts were simply to find his father and beat him up. But now, since he saw what the knights are doing, he is going to whoop the ass of the King of Camelot as well, just for good measure. The fox grins and agrees with the decision, but before they could resume their journey, Naz comes running towards them, claiming that he wants to journey with them, so he can become an even more skilled healer than Ordo. The fox claims that a healer would be very helpful in a dangerous journey, so they all agree and Naz joins the party. A couple of days pass by as they slowly make their way towards the kingdom of Lyones. Don tries to hunt for food as much as he can using his floating magic to catch fishes, while Percy practices controlling his magic. Up till now, he hasn't been very successful in controlling how his magic flows, and the fox thinks that up till now Percy has been using his magic based purely on his emotions. But he will have to learn it properly if he is going to defeat the Holy Knights. Nos shows some doubt about the existence of Camelot since, according to the legend, it was destroyed 16 years ago during the Great War between the races, but Percy believes the fox and tells them all to keep faith. Suddenly, they remember the magic bead that the fox used to save them and asks whether they can use another one to get to Lyones quickly, but Fox replies that he doesn't have any more of those magic beads. Naz seems to know about the magic beads which were created by Merlin, the mage, one of the 7 deadly sins. But more than that, he is interested in a book she had about all the poisons of the world. They soon start walking again and finally reach the town of Sista, which looks like a beautiful little hamlet where you can put an Airbnb and make a lot of profit. Percy starts running to look for opportunities when he suddenly spots a fresh mound of dirt piled on the side of the road. He barely digs it when he finds a small fragment of what looks like an antique item. Before they can say anything though, a voice calls them out from behind, telling them to drop the item and back off immediately. They turn around, only to find a blue-haired girl brandishing an umbrella-looking scabbard towards them. Don claims that they accidentally found it, but the blue-haired feminist shuts him up, claiming that no one just finds something buried so deep in dirt. What? Percy barely dug the ground to find it. Naz realizes that he seems to have seen this girl before, but before they could even talk, she whips out a goddamn sword out of that umbrella-looking abomination, which makes Don angry, and he grabs his dagger as well. Naz tries to stop them, but the feminist seems to be much better at combat, as with a single leg kick, she drops Don on his ass. Naz tries to defuse the situation, but he doesn't know that feminists don't follow logic, so she starts attacking him instead. Naz tries to defend himself with his daggers, but he too gets swept on his ass down on the floor, while he tells her to chill as they are not here to fight. She then finally turns towards Percy, telling him to hand over the article if he doesn't want to get hurt, and to her absolute surprise, Percy simply hands it over. This surprises her, and she claims that this must be a trick that they are trying to play on her, and they must be with the Red Holy Knight. It turns out that her eyes can see the lies and evil in other people. So she looks at all of them, finds a little bit of lies in Naz, a bunch of lies in Don, but when she turns towards Percy, she is shocked to see that this boy is as pure as they can get. The fox perks up his ears at the sound of the Holy Knight and asks which knight is she talking about. But before she could reply, a maid calls her, claiming that she needs to return back to the mansion. Before the maid could see the rock thing though, she shoves it down Percy's pants, telling him not to give it to anyone, especially a knight named Ironside. Percy immediately recognizes his father's name, but before he could ask any questions, the girl runs away. By the time evening falls, Percy and the party get a room for the night and watch the sunset, while wondering what their next step is going to be. Naz remembers that the girl's name is Anne, and she is the daughter of the lord in this town. Fox replies that even he has heard that name, but this is the first time he has actually seen her. Percy doesn't really seem to be interested in all that however, and claims that he needs to find her and ask more about where his father is. Fox tells him to calm down as he has no plans, and at his current level he could never defeat Ironside in a million years. He claims that they must figure out why exactly is he after this rock thing. It turns out that they were in luck since Ironside returns back to the town at night and collects every single citizen in the courtyard of the Lord's house for an announcement. The people haven't really seen many holy knights in their life, so they are in awe, while Percy and party hide on some rooftops watching everything unfold. The moment Percy saw Ironside, he wanted to rush in for a fight, but the fox stopped the little idiot before he could do anything, telling him that he is not strong enough to fight, and they need to know what the hell is going on. Ironside starts addressing the people and claims that he is here to warn them about a calamity which could destroy their entire town. With that, he puts his briefcase down and opens it, and what they see inside scares the crap out of the fox. The people don't really understand what that stone seal is, but the fox claims that the seal is a special magical device with which the goddess clan sealed the demon clan. But during the process they all had to sacrifice themselves as well, causing the extinction of the goddess clan while the demons were sealed. Fox believes that Ironside wants to use the seal once again, but this time he is planning to sacrifice everyone in the town. Percy immediately wants to rush in and fight with Ironside to protect the innocents, but Fox stops him, claiming that they still have the final piece, and as long as they have that, Ironside can't really do anything. Moreover, fighting here will definitely cause a lot of innocent people to die, so it's better for them to lay low for now. Everyone from the town seems awed by the Holy Knight and his predictions, as the knight claims that the 4 knights of the apocalypse are going to come and cause the destruction of this entire world. And before they could do that, their amazing King Arthur wants to stop them from achieving this goal. Before he could say anything else though, Anne bursts through the courtyard, telling everyone not to listen to a word this liar knight says. Her father, the Lord, is shocked and scared, fearing the wrath of the Holy Knight at this insult, but Anne doesn't stop. Her father tells her to get back to the kitchen and make them a sandwich, but Ironside tells him to not be so misogynistic. But Anne continues calling him a liar, claiming that she has special magical powers which lets her see through liars. This catches the Red Knight's attention, and he walks towards her, grabbing her arm, claiming that she needs to be disciplined, while her father tries to stop the knight, claiming that he will scold her later. The fox immediately drops down from the roof, telling the others that they should leave while they are arguing, but Percy jumps in the courtyard, telling Ironside to let the girl go. The Red Knight is shocked to see the boy still alive, as he thought he was dead, but Percy doesn't waste any time and runs towards the knight, using his magical golems to obstruct his vision, while he grabs the girl and starts running into an alley. Ironside immediately follows them and uses his magical cleave at them, but Percy saves them just at the last moment. But the blast causes a huge tower to start falling, causing a lot of damage. They all run towards their hotel where the last piece of the seal is hidden, but just as they reach the entry, they spot Anne's maid coming out with a tablet in her hand, and she then turns into a weird demon monster right in front of their eyes. The fox realizes that this must be Ironside's familiar as it flies away towards the courtyard, while the fox tells everyone that now they only have two choices: either to try and destroy the seal, or to grab one of the tablets and run away, otherwise every single person in this town will die. They all obviously decide to fight and run towards the courtyard, while Ironside starts the ritual with the now completed seal, which is ready for the blood sacrifice. Ironside starts chanting the sermons, which activates the seal, and the darkness within it starts escaping. A bunch of darkness starts splattering all over the city, which seeps into the stone, and monsters start arising everywhere. Percy and the party hear the townspeople screaming in fear, which stops Anne in her tracks as she wants to go and help them. But Percy tells her that he trusts the fox completely, and they should simply do what the fox suggested and try their best to stop Ironside. Anne tells him not to trust the fox so much, as she knows for a fact that it is hiding something, since her superpowers can see the darkness inside it. Percy, however, doesn't really care and tells her that he completely trusts the fox, and Nos replies that he will trust the fox if Percy trusts it. With that, Anne has no choice but to go with their plan, but on the way they suddenly spot Anne's father, the lord of the city, sprawled against a wall, injured and bleeding. Anne is scared that her father is dead, but Nos quickly checks him and tells her that he is just knocked out. With that, they turn their attention towards Ironside, who is busy with the ritual, and without even turning back, he tells them to stay away for the night as he is doing something important. Percy obviously doesn't really care and tells him to get a life, which pisses Ironside off, and without turning back, he shows them just a glimpse of his true power. That alone was enough to scare the living crap out of everyone, as their body refuses to move. But Percy is built different, so he rushes towards the Red Knight and uses his giant magic hand to try and smack Ironside. But the knight is much stronger than him and easily uses his magic to cut through Percy's attack without breaking a sweat. Percy decides to try a different trick and sends his magic golems towards the seal, but the energy from the magical artifact is too strong, and it completely disintegrates the golems instantly. With that, Ironside uses his own magic again, which cleaves through the earth, barely missing Percy and his party, but this was enough to scare them. Dawn starts contemplating whether it would be a better idea to simply run away, as this is not their problem to deal with right now, and they should instead focus on the bigger picture. But Nos refuses to leave the townspeople stranded and waiting for death. Dawn finally snaps and decides that he isn't cut out for this, so he starts running away, while Percy tells the others to try and pin the knight down while he destroys the seal. But Ironside is not stupid, and both him and Percy draw their swords. Percy uses his magical blade to try and land a barrage of strikes, but Ironside is much quicker and manages to parry each and every attack that comes his way. This forces Percy back, and finally Ironside cleaves cleanly through Percy's magic sword before trying to end the game then and there with a final killing blow. But Anne comes in clutch with her rapier and blocks the attack, which would have spelled doom for Percy. She asks Ironside how he can be so heartless that he first killed his own father, and now he is trying to kill his own son. Ironside claims that he is not used to hearing feminists babble in his ears, so he pushes her back. But Anne persists and tries to attack him, but it's of no use since he manages to parry every single thing. Anne is pushed back, but thinks that she might have a chance, but Ironside tries to break her will by showing that he managed to cut her clothes at multiple points, which means that he could have killed her whenever he wanted. Anne is not scared though, and she removes the tattered clothes to show us her massive personalities. Ironside has been on a mewing streak though, and he is not going to goon now just because of a stupid feminist, but before he could go on the offensive however, he suddenly starts feeling numb and his sword falls to the ground. It turns out that Nas managed to use his magic to imbue Anne's sword with a paralysis venom, which is potent enough to kill a giant. This really pisses Ironside off, and he finally turns around and sprinkles some sparkle on them as if he is a Barbie fan. But Anne's father realizes that he knows the attack, so he quickly jumps in, shielding her daughter, while the sparkles explode, injuring everyone. When the dust fades, it turns out that Percy used his magic golems to shield the others from the attack, so they survived it. But Ironside used this moment to grab Percy. Anne immediately comes to his defense, but Ironside smacks her sword away, forcing her back. After that he slams Percy to the ground when he tries to use his magic to break the seal, and shoves his sword in Percy's hand, causing him to scream in pain. Anne gets enraged and rushes towards Ironside again, but Ironside screams at her to stay at her position if she doesn't want to get mocked. This scares the shit out of her and she stops on the spot, while Ironside puts his boots on Percy's face, kicking him till he goes unconscious. His magical golems try to quickly heal his wounds, but Ironside stomps on them aggressively, before realizing that he can't let this boy grow up since that will create a lot of problems. So he takes his sword and plunges it deep inside Percy's heart while the life drains out of his eyes. With that, Ironside turns back towards the seal to complete the ritual, while Nas runs towards Percy's body and drags it back away from Ironside and tries to give him the potion that he created. Percy doesn't respond though, which causes him to lose hope, but Anne pushes him aside and tries to feed the potion to him personally, but it still does nothing. As they were about to completely give in to despair, suddenly a little amount of magical energy gets revived in Percy's body. This really surprises Ironside as he was sure about Percy's death, but he decides to finish them off for good and uses his cleave attack on them. To his surprise, Nas shields Percy with his own body, so Ironside attacks him again, but Nas doesn't move away. This gives Anne some confidence, and she decides to go on the offensive to try and buy time for Percy. But Ironside is not kidding around anymore as he starts trying to actually hurt the girl this time. Anne pushes forward with all her might, while Ironside gives him a haircut for absolutely no reason. All their efforts pay off though when Percy finally starts brimming with magical energy once again as the little magical golems completely surround everyone in the area, healing them back. Just then even Don comes back, claiming that he can't leave Percy behind, while Ironside realizes that Percy is far too dangerous to be left alive, and he must be killed for good. He tries to use a very strong attack on the boy, but Percy manages to push everyone back to safety as he floats in the air, telling Ironside that as long as he has even an ounce of strength left in his body, he will keep fighting to save the innocents. Suddenly explosions start happening in the city as one after the other every single monster starts dying due to a mystery attacker who carries a bunch of small daggers. Ironside's familiar reports back to him, claiming that most of the monsters are already dead by this mysterious attacker. This makes Ironside realize that he has lost this battle and can't really do anything anymore. He drops his sword, claiming that he is proud of Percy for becoming such a strong boy and claims that he will soon be executed for failing his task. Percy is surprised by this sudden change of heart, while Ironside continues to talk, asking Percy to come near him so he could see him one last time before facing his death. Percy might have listened to this one last request, but Anne screams at him to stop, claiming that she can see right through Ironside and there is not a single hint of remorse in him. She claims that he knows that he is lost, so he is now trying to simply kill Percy off. This enrages Ironside to no extent, and he starts shooting a bunch of magic air slices at them in quick succession. Percy reacts quickly and moves out of the way with the others, while Ironside fills the sky with stars. Percy swoops in towards Ironside and pretends to be a bomber plane before trying to launch an attack, but Ironside anticipates it and pushes them away. Percy swoops in once again, pretending to go in for a full frontal assault. But Don uses his magic to float the seal of darkness, and Percy changes his direction at the last moment, slicing the seal, breaking it into multiple pieces, while Don manages to snag the hilt of the broken sword from it, so that the seal can't be used again. The attack causes Ironside's armor to split in half as well, revealing his face, which annoys the crap out of him as he tells them that they are not going to leave this place alive. But before he could attack again, another holy knight named Mort appears beside him and tells him that they need to leave. Ironside doesn't seem to be in the mood, but Mort claims that someone defeated all the greater demons in the city, which means that they are either one of the legendary 7 deadly sins or someone equally as strong. Ironside realizes that they need to leave, so they disappear into darkness, while the rest let out a sigh of relief. All of them realize that they were no match for Ironside and were just lucky to escape alive. Finally, the fox returns again, claiming that it was one of his friends that saved the city, but plays coy and refuses to reveal who it was. The next morning, they all get ready to leave when Anne walks out all dressed up like a tomboy, telling her father that she wants to go on an adventure as well. And to her surprise, her father doesn't try and stop her. In fact, he tells her to go ahead and become an amazing holy knight. With that, Anne becomes the newest member of the party, looking ahead for the adventures awaiting them. Their journey starts slowly as they start covering ground quickly and decide to move through the city of Kant, which is known to be a slightly safer way out. On the way, Don remembers the time when a holy knight named Hauser used to train both him and another student named Eld in the arts of being a holy knight. Hauser was his mother's older brother and took him under his wing when he first started training. But then, even though everything was going great, Don couldn't do it anymore and ended up running away. By the time they enter Kant, it's already midday, so they decide to explore things out a little. Nas goes to check out the armory for some glass vials. Anne goes ahead to get supplies for their adventures. Percy finds an underground sumo fighting ring, while the fox gets angry at everyone for messing around before planning their day so that they can quickly make their way towards Leonie's. They enter an inn soon where they bargain for rooms, which comes out to be 22 silver coins. But since the fox gave all the silver to Anne for safekeeping, they had to wait. When Anne finally returns, she comes with a huge sack of stuff, including canteens, lanterns, rugs, and other stupid items that they will never need. Fox is annoyed by this, but thinks that maybe she got everything for a really good price. But when she tells him that she only has 3 silver remaining, Fox gets really mad since he gave her 15 Gotham gold coins, which is enough to buy a fully furnished house. Anne tries to defend himself, but Fox tells her to return everything, otherwise they won't have any place to stay for the night. With that, Anne turns away angrily and huffs at Percy to carry the sack back to the shop to return it, while Fox walks the other way to cool off. Don and Nos decide to use this downtime to get something nice to drink, so they enter a tavern and order some drinks. Before they could enjoy anything, though, a huge drunk blonde man walks up to them and drinks their liquor. Don was about to get angry, but his face turns white when he realizes that this man is none other than his uncle, the holy knight Hauser from Leonie's. Hauser also recognizes Don and starts trash talking him about how he is nothing but a freak from a circus now and how his mother must be crying in heaven, disgusted at the sight of her weak-ass son who ran away from training. While they were in the tavern, Percy and Anne ended up going to the sumo ring, where Anne gambled everything on Percy, and it paid off as Percy defeated every single man in the ring, earning a huge payday. Back at the tavern, the Hauser, Naz, and Don sit at the same table, when Don tries to excuse himself, but the sword hilt which he had falls to the ground. Hauser immediately recognizes it and grabs it, asking where Don stole it from. Don tries to defend himself, claiming that he didn't steal anything, but Hauser doesn't listen, asking whether he even knows what this is. Don gives him a stupid answer about how it's just a piece of an old artifact. This pisses Hauser off, and he slaps Don so hard that he smashes into the tables behind him. Hauser shouts at him to take things seriously, as this piece of sword has the power to destroy all of Leonie's easily. He tells Don that he was never cut out to be a holy knight and that he is a failure of a man who will never amount to anything in life. Naz rushes to Don's defense, calling Hauser out on his disgusting behavior by starting a drunken brawl. Just then, Anne and Percy also enter the room, while Don runs outside with tears falling from his eyes. Percy is confused while Hauser walks up to them and grabs the bag of coins from Anne's hands, claiming that kids shouldn't gamble. Anne tries to take it back from him, but Nas stops her, before telling Hauser to return back the sword hilt and the bag of coins immediately. Hauser asks whether he wants to fight, but Nas simply claimed that they could decide everything with a simple drinking game. Hauser of course agrees, and they start drinking, when Nas realizes that something is wrong with this city. Suddenly, both Percy and Anne fall to the ground, looking like they are blackout drunk, while the people around them take out their weapons. Suddenly, the door opens and a silver-haired man enters the room, asking Hauser what the hell is he doing here. Hauser immediately recognizes Ed, who was the other student apart from Don, but Ed went bad and became a bandit. Hauser turns around angrily towards Ed and asks whether he was the one who was robbing and killing people passing through these areas for the past few months, and Ed ends up confirming that he is the bandit king in this area. Ed's cronies start surrounding Hauser and Nas, which scares the young dripped-out boy. But this is not Hauser's first rodeo, so he bangs the table with his hands and stands up with a smile, ready to fight. Nas feels the immense amount of strength radiating through the holy night, which actually scares Ed's cronies. But before the fight could even begin, Hauser falls to the ground, blackout drunk. Ed laughs at him, claiming that he knows exactly how much Hauser is capable of drinking before he blacks out, so he waited for the perfect moment. Nas knows that he is outnumbered, which means that a direct confrontation is meaningless. So he asks them what are they going to do with him and his friends. One of the cronies smirks, remarking that they are going to steal all the money and valuables and then sell them all off into slavery. Nas decides that these idiots are evil enough that he can use some untested potions. He creates a small ball of venom and slowly dissipates it throughout the air, which easily knocks out every single enemy in the room. But Ed is not that dumb, and he uses his hand to cover his nose, which saves him. Nas doesn't think that Ed on his own is any threat, so he turns around claiming that he is going to take his friends away. But as soon as he turns around, Ed calls his attention, to show that he has grabbed Percy. This shocks Nas as Percy was lying on the ground just a second ago. But the moment he turns around to see, he realizes that Ed was playing a trick on him, as he spots Percy lying at his spot sleeping. But it's too late as Ed knocks him out with a chop to the neck. Back at the bottom of the hill, Donnie stands and thinks about Hauser's words, realizing that he was not wrong, and that his mother is probably disgusted to see how her son has grown up. But before he could snap out of it, he spots Ed coming towards him. Don didn't expect it at all and asks whether he has been traveling with Hauser all this time. But Ed replies that he has cut his ties with Hauser, and has given up on the dream of becoming a holy knight. Don is shocked at this as Ed was really good and always wanted to become a holy knight. But Ed tells him that it's all a waste and instead invites him to become a partner in crime, where they rob any traveler that comes their way. Don decides to dip and tells Ed that he is going to meet up with his friends, but Ed puts a hand on his shoulder, telling Don that he has captured all of his friends and he should forget about them and join him as a bandit instead. This pisses Don off as he shoves Ed's hands away, warning him to release them at once. Back at the tavern, Ed's cronies finally wake up and shove everyone into a jail cell before taking away all their money. They end up throwing away the magical sword hilt as they thought it was just a broken sword. Nas tries to make sense of the situation, thinking that by now Don must have realized that something is wrong. Hauser, however, interrupts his thoughts as he tells Nas not to get his hopes up, since Don is a big loser and a bigger coward who only thinks about himself and nothing else. Just when all hope seemed lost, the barkeep enters the dungeon and opens the gates of their jail cell, claiming that he is obviously not with Ed or his bandits. Nas uses his magic to extract the alcohol from Percy and Anne, who finally come back to their senses, and Anne immediately starts demanding why the hell is Hauser with them. Percy also doesn't wait for an answer, but picks up from where he left as he rams his head in Hauser's stomach for slapping Don, causing Hauser to collapse. Nas tells them to stop as Hauser is a holy knight from the kingdom of Lyones. The barkeep tells them to be very careful of Ed since he has managed to tame a dragon which he is using to threaten everyone as he can raise the entire city to the ground whenever he wants. According to the barkeep, Ed started coming to his tavern regularly and he would always be sulking and in a bad mood, but slowly he started creating a gang and hired every single criminal in the city. When the barkeep once asked these people why they were following such a young leader, he replied that Ed has guts alongside strength, which he proved by going to the lair of the ancient dragon all alone and then stealing its egg, with which he managed to bring the dragon to his heel. Nas finds a flaw in that theory though. He claims that the egg can hatch at any moment, so he can't keep using it as a way of controlling the dragon forever. The barkeep claims that he is right, and that's why Ed has hid the real egg somewhere else. Nas is confused, but Hauser explains that imitation magic is Ed's specialty. And suddenly Nas's encounter where he saw Ed holding Percy's body made a lot of sense, since it was only a mirage. The barkeep begs Hauser to save his former student, but Hauser claims that he couldn't care less if the dragon eats Ed right now. The barkeep knows that Hauser doesn't feel that way deep down, but it might have been already too late, since some of the gang members got fed up by Ed's way of dealing with things since he never let them have any fun with the prisoners, never let them kill any knight, and he never let them hurt anyone they caught. Because of that, a mutiny happens and 3 of the bandits hit Ed on the head with a rock, knocking him to the ground while they grab the egg for themselves. Ed slowly recovers from the initial shock and screams at them to return the egg. But the dragon appears in the sky angry, which causes the bandits to get scared, and they drop the egg, which causes the mirage to break. This pisses the crap out of the dragon, and it decides to start breaking things with its dog animation. The entire town starts running away, knowing that the entire city is going to get destroyed at this rate. Ed tries to find a way to deal with the dragon, but the dragon is too strong, and he can't really do anything. Back inside the jail, they wonder what to do with this issue, when they hear a growling sound from the wall. Suddenly, the barkeep remembers something and opens a secret door, which reveals a baby dragon chained inside looking very weak. They all rush towards it, realizing that the egg was already hatched, and Nas decides to heal the dragon while Percy and Anne try to find Don. While dodging the falling debris, they finally find Don and Ed hanging on a bunch of wooden beams, so Percy tells them to jump down. Don totally trusts Percy, so he jumps, but Ed hesitates, causing him to caught up in the dragon's blast. But thankfully for him, Percy uses his magic to save them and absorbs the flame before blasting it back towards the dragon, which does absolutely no damage. The dragon begins a counterattack, forcing Percy to dodge and weave through the air in order to escape the enraged dragon. But no matter how much he tries, he can't seem to get an edge over the beast. He tries to use his giant hand to slap the dragon, but he gets smacked back in return, causing his magic to dissipate. They all fall back to the ground while the dragon begins moving towards them once again. Percy immediately tries to send his mini golems to attack, but they do absolutely zero damage at the hard scaly body of the flying lizard, who lunges back at the party and tries to skewer them to death. Thankfully, they all manage to get away while Ed uses an imitation of Percy to distract the dragon. They hop on top of Anne's horse and start running as fast as possible, but the idiot horse ends up tripping over a rock and throws the entire party back to the ground. Don asks Percy what are the chances of him winning the fight against this dragon, but to his surprise, Percy smiles and claims that there is absolutely no chance of them winning. This scares the crap out of Don, who immediately jumps on top of the fallen horse, urging it to run, but Anne tells him to get off as they need to quickly get away. They all start running on foot, when suddenly they feel a very strong gust of wind coming their way. They stop in their tracks as they spot Hauser walking their way unscared and totally in the zone. Ed tries to tell him to run away, but the Holy Knight tells them all to shut up and move aside. They are surprised by his confidence as they wonder what could his plan be, but Don, who has seen Hauser in action, seems confident in his abilities. Hauser takes out his lance and starts walking straight at the dragon, who immediately uses its flame breath at him. But Hauser doesn't even flinch and simply creates a tornado, which completely nullifies the dragon's attack. Now comes his chance, so he uses another wind blade attack, which hits the dragon straight in the face, blasting it away. The dragon is not done yet though, and it gets up once more and tries to strike Hauser, but he dodges elegantly into the air before spinning around and using his most dangerous cyclone attack, which creates winds strong enough to yank the dragon from the ground and throw him to the side, knocking it out. Everyone standing there is left in shock, while Don smiles, telling them that Hauser is one of the Og Holy Knights from ancient Lyones who also fought in the war against the demons 16 years ago. They all run up to Hauser thanking him for saving his life, while Percy seems to be overflowing with excitement as he jumps towards the knight, begging him to teach him everything so he can become a holy knight as well. Hauser seems a little shy at the sudden attention when he notices that Ed is trying to run away. He orders him to stop, asking whether he is going to simply walk away after causing so much damage to this town, but Ed doesn't really have a good reply. For that, he gets a punch in his face which sends him down to the ground. He coughs up blood, telling Hauser to arrest him if he wants, since he will never amount to anything anyways. Hauser tells him that Ed should have never left the training, but he complains that he was never good enough to even land a glancing hit at Hauser. He never had what it takes to become a holy knight. This makes Hauser thinks about his training methods and how he wanted to create the best holy knights, so he was a little too hard and a little too stern, which broke the poor boys down in the worst way possible. He then surprises Ed by apologizing to him for not being a better mentor and a teacher, before telling him that they are going to redo the entire training and make sure that Ed completes it this time and becomes one of the finest knights of the kingdom. Ed tears up at this opportunity and thanks Hauser from the bottom of his heart. Meanwhile, Nos arrives with the baby dragon which goes near its mother, only to find out that thankfully the dragon is still alive and well. Nos asks whether this dragon will attack the town again, but Hauser reassures him, claiming that the dragon simply attacked because its baby was ripped away from it. Now that the family is reunited, the dragon will return back to its lair never to be seen again. Hauser seems to have recognized the fox and asks whether he has sent a word to the king of Lyones about the fact that he has found one of the legendary knights of the apocalypse. Fox claims that he hasn't sent a word yet, but realizes that maybe it is the correct time to let the king know. Fox wanders off behind some rocks and suddenly a bright purple arrow swooshes through the skies at an incredible speed straight to the kingdom of Lyones, where the king watches it burst into the sky, informing him that one of the knights have been found. The king smiles and eagerly awaits the arrival of Percy, while Percy and the party continue their journey towards Lyones, ready to face whatever lies in their way. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.